collegandoci con il Canada e con gli Stati Uniti. Abbiamo due amici qui con noi, collegati, uno adesso la città ce lo dirà lui, ma comunque insomma nell'Ontario, e l'altro dagli Stati Uniti. Richard Falk, hello? Hi Richard. Hello, can you hear me? Non sentiamo la tua voce, non so la regia. Richard? Intanto vi dico...
Yeah, I was muted. I'm happy to be
Hello,
with you.
hi Richard, I'm very happy to...
For this period in Turkey, and I think the presentations that I've just heard were extremely moving and challenging.
Richard, let me introduce you. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you very clearly.
Ok. I want just to introduce you. Richard Falk è stato il relatore speciale, la nostra Francesca albanese, dentro le Nazioni Unite dal 2008 al 2014. Ma con Richard abbiamo una bella amicizia perché Richard era qui in questa sala il 24 di settembre del 1995, quando organizzammo la prima assemblea dell'ONU dei popoli, e Richard venne a fare proprio una riflessione, condividere con noi una riflessione sull'ONU e sulla necessità di difendere il diritto internazionale. Sono passati 30 anni e continuiamo a farlo. Grazie Richard, e poi subito dopo vorrei sentire, se anche lui è in collegamento, Michael Lynk dal Canada. Michael, hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Let us hear your voice.
Listen, thank you so much for having me at this extraordinary Congress of people. I've been, like Richard, deeply moved by every speaker that I've heard, and I'm very honored to be a part of this.
Thank you. Michael Lynk è stato, anche qui ancora una volta uso questa espressione un po' giornalistica, è stato la nostra Francesca albanese dal 2016 al 2022, è stato relatore speciale al Consiglio diritti umani delle Nazioni Unite sulla situazione dei diritti umani nei territori palestinesi occupati dal 67. Allora, thank you to be with us. I would like to start with Professor Richard Falk. You have 10 minutes to share with us, if it's okay for you. Thank you again for being with us.
Thank you again for having me, and I am honored to be among such dedicated people at this historical time when we have some hope that at least the violent phases of genocide will be abated, and we must mobilize as never before to ensure that this ceasefire isn't transformed into an even more shocking kind of victory for the perpetrator of genocide and the main country complicit, unfortunately my own country, the US. It is a challenge to hold accountable in some way, and both Michael and I are involved with the formation of the Global People's Tribunal that has its final session in Istanbul in a short time, October 23rd to 26th, and hopes to not only provide a definitive picture of what the human suffering, the torment, and the neglect by the world of this terrible challenge to our humanity. And it is a great challenge to us to not only define as well as possible and identify the crimes, not as a court, but as a body dedicated to justice-driven solutions. And in the context of Palestine, no people on earth are more deserving of a just outcome that recognizes their fundamental state rights, most centrally the right of self-determination. And we have assembled many outstanding speakers and witnesses, experts, to help us reach an outcome that mobilizes civil society around the world to take the sort of solidarity initiatives that proved so important in the context of the South African struggle against apartheid. That has started to happen, and it provides a moral momentum for the work of our tribunal. But the work is difficult at the moment because it's competing with this Trump 20-point plan that one cannot take issue with in its first phases, because it really is a way of making the people of Gaza survive under desperate conditions. It's a survival initiative from the point of view of the Palestinians. It shouldn't be completely exonerated as a brilliant stroke of diplomacy when its essence consisted of a threat of massive genocidal terror. The Palestinian leadership was given 72 hours to respond or to face a unrestricted Palestinian military onslaught, fully supported by the US, supposedly the leading liberal democracy in the world. The role of the UN has properly been criticized. At the same time, we should recognize two things. One, that the International Court of Justice has done all that it could do to try to bring the genocide to a halt and to insist on the legal obligations of Israel to allow humanitarian aid to be delivered. And in both instances, Israel has defied the authority of international justice administered by the ICJ, and we shouldn't blame the ICJ for not having the capability to enforce, because that was part of the UN design, that it would be enforceable only by action of the Security Council, which is hampered whenever one of the 5 permanent members has strategic reasons for exercising their veto. The other area that has been had a positive effect on creating an international atmosphere in which Israel is no longer viewed as a legitimate state. It's viewed as a pariah in the international community. And until it not only withdraws from occupation, but renounces Zionist ideology, it will never deserve to be liberated from that outlaw status. And that's a great symbolic victory attributable to the courage and perseverance of Palestinian resistance. And that is what we will remember when we try in the future to bring out the elements that came together in this horrible ordeal, this horrible spectacle of crime and suffering. The other aspect of UN contributions has been through the truth-telling role that Francesca Albanese has so brilliantly and courageously undertaken and fulfilled. And one of the great ironies of our time is that truth-telling is sanctioned so that it makes a space for the maintenance of lies and falsehoods. And it's a metaphor for the crazy imbalance between the truth and reality that has allowed even these liberal democracies to hide behind falsehood in order to deny their obligations to uphold international law and international morality, and to work toward the accountability of those who commit such serious crimes. In closing, let me say that until the people of Palestine enjoy their own destiny as determined by their authentic representatives, there will be no durable peace, and there will be a shocking continuation of the struggle and the open wounds that this has left behind, and challenging a world that has been far too passive up to this time. And as has been said earlier by one of the speakers, we the people have the means to bring this terrible Palestinian ordeal to a just and durable end. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing your thought and your strength. Thank you again. And now I'm calling for Michael Lynk. Very happy to have also you here with us. You have the floor, please.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much for allowing me to be part of this really important conference. I'm very honored and touched, and particularly to appear with my great colleague, Richard Falk. In the short time that I have, I want to be able to speak to you about two issues. First, the role of the two international courts, the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court, in their attempts and in the people's attempts to achieve accountability and an end to impunity in Palestine and Israel. And then secondly, I want to very briefly comment on the new Trump ceasefire agreement through the lens of international law and why it is likely to fail. So first, speaking to the various proceedings in front of the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court, let's remember that international law represents our global value system. It was created in the ashes of the Second World War 80 years ago and represents our very best hopes for advancing human rights, equality, and justice across the world. I want to acknowledge that there are many problems with international law, but the biggest problem is its lack of enforcement powers. This was a deliberate design flaw built into international law by the great powers at the end of the Second World War, notably the United States and to a degree Russia as well, who designed the the United Nations in 1945. International law is not self-executing. It has no police of its own. It has no army of its own. It depends upon international political resolve and international political will to enforce international law, and that is often lacking, particularly when it comes to Palestine and Israel. Because of this, it has been said that in the Middle East, international law is often closer to power than it is to justice, and this has been very true. But because international law establishes important values, because it stands for human rights, justice, and equality, it can be a very important tool in the hands of civil society and people of conscience for achieving all of the gains that people need around the world. So, turning to the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court, there are or have been recently 4 important proceedings in front of the courts over the past 2 years that have an important bearing on the rights of the Palestinians. Let me very briefly take you through them. And we will see the operation of both power and justice at work with each of them. The first one I want to talk about is the investigations by the International Criminal Court in The Hague into war crimes and crimes against humanity in the occupied Palestinian territory. And its basis is the 1998 Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, which 125 countries are members of. The International Criminal Court has jurisdiction over Palestine because of a ruling by the court in February 2021 after the state of Palestine joined the court. And in November 2024, the International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants against Benjamin Netanyahu and his former defense minister, Yoav Gallant, on 2 grounds. One was the use of starvation, which are war crimes against a civilian population during a conflict. And the second is also the way in which Israel's conducted the war and the massive human suffering of the extraordinary civilian toll in deaths and injuries and the destruction of their city. There may be investigations in the future into Israeli war crimes as well, involving the settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Under the Rome Statute, an occupying power building civilian settlements in occupied territory is committing a war crime. Now, shortly after Donald Trump came into office in January 2025, the United States issued sanctions on the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, predicated on his pursuit of accountability in the context of Palestine. And then subsequently, the U.S. has not only issued sanctions against 6 judges at the International Criminal Court, and also issuing sanctions against the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. It's also now issued sanctions against the 2 deputy prosecutors who are currently leading the office of the prosecutor. And there's recent indications that the United States is going to now pose sanctions on the court as a whole, which would be a significant and potentially debilitating situation for it. And so far, most International Criminal Court members, there are, as I said, 125 of them, have failed to deploy all the available methods of shielding the court from these kinds of attacks. And most obviously, this has been a failure, an epic failure by the European Union. Look, if ever a world leader did not deserve the Nobel Peace Prize, it will be Donald Trump. He doesn't deserve to be in Oslo. He deserves to be in The Hague. Turning now to the International Court of Justice, there are three proceedings that are important for all of us to know about. First is South Africa's application under the Genocide Convention against Israel. This was begun in January 2024, and that's when the International Court of Justice ruled that South Africa had raised a plausible case of genocide against Israel, and it issued three sets of provisional measures that are legally binding against Israel, which Israel has not obeyed. It has continued with its genocide and has continued with its mass displacement of the Palestinian people. Secondly, was an advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice that was issued in July of 2024. It's saying that Israel's occupation is unlawful and it must end as rapidly as possible. The court also said that Israel was in violation of Article 3 of the Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, which prohibits racial segregation and apartheid. This is the closest that the International Court of Justice has come to saying that Israel is committing apartheid in the occupied Palestinian territory, largely because of the Israeli settlement enterprise and because of the hundreds of settlements that are Jewish only in East Jerusalem and the West Bank. And now we have, following that, an important resolution from the United Nations General Assembly in September 2024, which said that Israel had 1 year to be able to fully evacuate its settlements and fully end its unlawful occupation. That 12 months expired at the end of September 2025, 3 weeks ago. And yet the world has not yet done anything to compel Israel to live up to what the International Court of Justice and the world opinion expressed through the United Nations General Assembly has done. The third important step at the International Court of Justice regarding Palestine is another advisory opinion that the General Assembly has asked the International Court to issue as to whether or not Israel is complying with its obligations as a United Nations member in obstructing the operations of the United Nations in the occupied Palestinian territory, and particularly the work of UNRWA with regards to its schools, its healthcare operations, its services that it provides to the Palestinian people. This decision will come out in several weeks' time on the 22nd of October, and it's likely to find that Israel is in breach of its obligations and make various recommendations for the international community to follow. Now, why have I said all this? It's really important that we know that international law is not simply for lawyers. It's for all of us. And it extends the very best of what we are as humanity. And it winds up needing to be applied by civil society organizations and by people of conscience with regards to this. So let me just briefly turn now to the Trump plan. Yes, there are positives, as Richard Falk has mentioned. There's going to be release of the Israeli hostages. There's going to be release of many of the Palestinian detainees that have been kept illegally by Israel over the past large number of years. And there will be much more humanitarian aid entering into Gaza in the days and weeks and months to come. But this is a ceasefire that should have been reached and could have been reached many months ago. Let's recall that Donald Trump had negotiated and enforced a ceasefire at the end of January 2025, as he was stepping into office. And then that was broken unilaterally by Israel on the 18th of March, 2025, and has continued to be breached over the last 6.5 months with the deaths of many, many more thousands of Palestinians and the immense increased suffering in the Gaza Strip. There are many reasons that why I think, and we should all think, that this peace plan, so-called peace plan, will not succeed in the short term or the long term. For any lasting ceasefire in the Middle East or anywhere else to succeed, it must be firmly rooted in respect for human rights and international law. And that is nowhere mentioned in Trump's 20-point peace plan. We also have the issue of there's no mention at all of what is going on in the West Bank, in East Jerusalem, and the rest of Israel with respect to the denial and the infringement of the rights of the Palestinian people. So to conclude, let me emphasize this. The value of international law is that every country in the world has signed on to the Charter of the United Nations and to many of the leading human rights and humanitarian law treaties. In addition to the courts, civil society organizations and people of conscience can demand that we hold our political decision makers everywhere responsible for enforcing these rights that people have and enjoy and must enjoy everywhere and at all times. International law and the rights that it proclaims belongs to all of us, and these are important tools. And let me also echo what Richard Falk has said and his tribute to the work of our successor, Francesca Albanese. She has risen to this up to this very difficult moment, and she is a great gift from the people of Italy to the international community in her indispensable work for advancing human rights. Let me conclude with this. The Reverend Martin Luther King once famously said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." We all know this immortal saying, but we don't know what one of his most important disciples and followers, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, added to that phrase. The Reverend Jesse Jackson said, "The arc of the moral universe, it doesn't bend towards justice by itself. We, all of us, have to make it bend. That's our moral obligation." Thank you very much.
Thank you.